Okay, folks, so starting this video off, what I want to do is firstly highlight some different facts that are readily available just to make everyone aware of the situation. So this evening I'm going to be talking about food waste awareness. So how I'm going to be doing that is first of all explaining what the current situation is with food waste in the UK, really trying to explain why it's an issue that we should all be concerned about and how we can have a positive impact on this issue by reducing our personal contribution to food waste and effectively living more sustainably. Then I'll be talking about some different ways where we can effectively, as an individual, have a lesser impact. And if we can't help but throw some items away, what we can potentially use with, say, off-cuttings or unusable material, and where we can effectively still use that in a sustainable way that can contribute to something that's both useful for us as an individual and potentially our household. So, getting on then, folks, for first of all what the problem is or the key facts and figures. So, in the UK, we throw away 9.5 million tonnes of food waste, so that's an astronomical amount. However, it is slowly been dropping year on year, but that is still 9.5 million tonnes of food that is thrown away and otherwise going into landfill and having no, it's not effectively landing on someone's dinner plate. It's not being used as effectively as it could be, and it's just sitting there wasting away. And as that food breaks down and as that different tons of food waste breaks down, the methane that's produced by the bacteria as the food biodegrades effectively then enters the atmosphere and contributes to climate change and greenhouse gas emissions. So, whilst there are some ways that we can use that food waste effectively, and there are sites around the UK where we use anaerobic digestion, where effectively we capture that methane and we use that to generate power and to act as a supply of methane gas, which we can then use to effectively heat our homes and, as I said, supply power. The concern is there is still a large amount of landfill sites where we aren't able to do that. We aren't able to capture that methane, and as a result, those methane gas emissions are being pumped into the atmosphere, and effectively, we can't curb that contribution, and we need to take action to reduce that. So, generally speaking, the other main thing that I would like to highlight is a lot of the food that we effectively consume and a lot of the food waste or a lot of the food that we buy, the 6.5 million tons of waste food is produced from post-farm gate. So this is once it's gone from the farmer, from the supplier to the supermarket, and has effectively been brought by the consumer. Now, 30% of this means that some of the food is not making it to the supermarket, so that can be because the standards that we place on certain types of food products don't meet the grades, and there is an element to be said about changing standards, that recognizing campaigns which have been run by companies such as Tesco, Asda, and so on, where they have added back in the wonky fruit and veg schemes. And I will always advocate on behalf of our local producers and our local greengrocers to effectively acknowledge that these different and misshapen, often carrots and root vegetables and other greengrocer products that you find typically at your local stores or farm shops. These are perfectly fine. They are generally very tasty, and they have no lesser quality than what you would generally expect from the supermarket. And by buying from these farm shops, you are also contributing to some local individuals and local families' livelihoods. So, as well as reducing on the amount of carbon miles that food has travelled. So this does have a net positive impact in itself, and equally is more sustainable as a method of consumption. So definitely something I would advocate, but that is still, unless we see a shift in that direction, 30% of that food waste is still going to be occurring purely based on food not getting to the supermarkets, and then that further 70% is down to individual consumers on what actions we should take to effectively reduce the amount of food wasted from our individual households. Now, generally speaking, one positive in this area is that we are at least seeing that more people are aware of food waste, and there are generally over 60% of people are now aware that there is some degree of food waste, or some people have at least heard of different campaigns. They are aware of the issue. They might not be aware of the full campaign information, but they are aware something needs to be done about food waste and getting that information out. And arguably, the campaign that this should be rallying behind is the Love Food, Hate Waste campaign. So the more we can do to highlight this campaign and to effectively make sure that this is being recognised as a national campaign, where each household each year is aware of this particular event or particular week, where we are targeting food waste and we are reducing the amount of contribution that individuals' households have by just raising awareness, is something to really take action on and really support. However, as with any of these weeks or awareness days, the main point is to get people talking about it and then to get people to action or change their behaviour. So that brings me on to, how can you change behaviour? What can we effectively do as individuals, and what as a society should we be trying to advocate for and to practice more of? So, easiest way to initially tackle this is to plan ahead. Make sure your shopping list is what you need and what you effectively need as those core ingredients for different recipes. And something I want to highlight as an area that we should be focusing on and we should be sharing. One thing I certainly want to be doing is making recipes more readily available and teaching different individuals how to cook and how to prepare food. Now, by no means am I an expert in this area. If anything, it's an area where I myself have some very interesting meals or very interesting versions of these meals. But although I'm aware I'm by no means anything special in the kitchen, recognizing that trying to plan your meals ahead and trying to plan how your ingredients are going to be incorporated is a step in the right direction. And if we can start sharing these different techniques and different meal plans with our fellow citizens and fellow residents, we can effectively work towards more sustainable meals that we're having throughout the week, and these are taken from good quality, sustainable ingredients, and this is what we should be all looking for to have a lesser impact personally on the environment. Now, other things to focus on is making the food that you have got last longer. So, if you're like me, you do maybe very large meals that would normally cater for larger than what your household is. Easiest way to save this is to put it to a Tupperware tub or a food bag and freeze it. And just putting that food into your freezer to make it last a bit longer, or taking certain amounts from a particular ingredient and then freezing the ingredient, or cooking the ingredient off and mixing it in with something. The other thing to bear in mind and this is especially with more plant products or plant-based products, the other thing that you can do is you can take, for example, if you have some leftover kale leaves that you haven't got time to put into a meal, or leftover tomatoes, you can put different preservatives in to effectively make sauces or to make soups, which will, because of the method of how they are made, you can then potentially freeze the soup, or keep the sauce more preserved because of the method of how you made it. Fruit, put into a jam, or even put into a cake, and make it last longer and go further. So this also goes on to the other point, which is about turning your leftovers into additional recipes. And if you can do this in an effective way, you can make those individual items last for multiple meals and effectively use more of it. And then what I would say is anything where you've got these food items left over and you don't know what to do with them, put those food items into compost bins. Put them into compost. Generally, these heated compost bins or non-heated compost bins, they can, after a period of about between 9 to 12 months, sometimes longer, can break down those waste materials. And this is, I do suggest here, only plant-based material going into compost bins. And as they break down, they effectively can then act as fuel for a garden at home and provide resources for different ingredients that you might then take from your garden and generally generate more sustainable products which you've taken straight from your back garden and provided straight to the dinner plate and really reduced the amount of carbon miles that your individual food items have had. And this can be further contributed by the likes of planting seed sharing and organizations which you can, or groups that you can set up in your local communities where you can effectively share these different products around. And what I would also advocate here, folks, is if you have something that is a particular area where you've done very well with, so for example, if you found that you can grow an abundant crop of tomatoes or an abundance of different fruit trees, with tomatoes, donate a few to different residents who might want to try it and have a go themselves, and let them have a try and let them also share from your experience, show them what you've done, how you've got it, what different techniques you do, and share the knowledge, because this makes people more sustainable because they know or they're learning from different people, and that different amount of knowledge can then contribute to them having a sustainable crop of tomatoes or other plants that they can plant year after year, and they know how to do it, and then they can know how to store it. Equally, even products that you might think, okay, you normally throw them straight in the bin, for example, pepper seeds. If you dry them out and you make sure that they've been suitably stored, so keep them in a dry environment, so normally putting them in the fridge just to dry them out, you can then use those seeds after they've been kept correctly, bring them out in the just after the frost period is ended, and start to germinate them, and you can effectively use the seeds that you've got from your peppers that you brought from the supermarkets and then plant a few out.